first introduce you, we'll start by saying that in 1970, Ruth and Nat Skurnik returned from a trip to France. And the first thing they did was they built a wine cellar in the basement of their Long Island home. And two teenage boys, Michael and Harmon, had the wine bug planted in them right then and there. And both of them wound up working at Windows on the World and the Cellar in the Sky, that great wine-centric restaurant that no longer exists, unfortunately, but a fantastic place that was a part of the wine history in New York City. And then from there, they springboarded out to 1987. They started a company with 6 wineries from California, and they were distributing in New York only. And in their first year, they pulled down $1 million in sales. And now we fast forward to 33 years later, if my math is correct. They have a portfolio of 500 some odd wineries. They've got the tri-state area. They've got a Midwest operation, a West Coast operation. They're an importer and wholesaler and distributor. And they pulled down $150 million in sales last year. It's quite a success story for a small family-run company. So Michael Skurnik, welcome to our live chat. Thank you.
Thank you. My biggest fear is that, we make it look easy. People look at what we've done and say, "Oh, the wine business it's got to be easy."
It is not easy. So kudos to you for your success. Let's talk about your 30-year run. You've obviously weathered some financial crises in the past. Even in the late 1980s when you got started was not an easy time. And then, of course, 2001, September 11, 2008. But nobody's ever seen anything like this. But when we spoke earlier, you actually told me that your contacts in the wine industry, and in Italy specifically, gave you kind of a heads up and that you sort of maybe knew a little bit before maybe most folks on the street that something bad was coming.
Yeah, well, first of all, could I just take a second to give a shout out to start with to all of my brothers and sisters in the hospitality industry who are suffering greatly with this crisis in unprecedented ways. And secondly, the second shout out is just to my amazing team, staff of Skurnik Wines, without whom we would not be able to weather this crisis. I've been incredibly impressed with their work ethic and their desire to dig in and help us get through this whole crisis together. So yeah, I had a feeling. I don't know. I just had a feeling. In early March, the weekend of La Polée, Daniel Jonas's event, we were planning to do a series of great big tastings in California the following week. San Francisco Monday, LA on Tuesday, San Diego Wednesday, so forth and so on. And I started to get some phone calls coming in from California winemakers who were worried because back at that time with COVID-19, if you recall, Italy was ground zero. And some of the calls that came in where they were asking, are there going to be any Italians at this tasting? Because I'm feeling a little uneasy about that. Yep. And at the time, I thought that was a little bit strange. But as we talked it over and thought about it over several hours, we realized that on Saturday, March 7th, which is pretty early, we had to cancel the events for the following week. And we did. And we received a lot of flack, actually, because so many vignerons had flown in from all over the world to attend this thing, and they already made that investment, and people just didn't understand it. But I myself, with Judy, my wife, we escaped New York, fortunately, and we're down in the Virgin Islands, and we did that on March 12th, which was pretty early, but I could really see the storm coming. I just had a feeling.
Yeah, so let's jump ahead now. Then you get into April, and then France, Italy, Spain, they're all in trouble. You deal with producers in those areas. And then, of course, California closes down, New York closes down, other parts of the country close down, and the restaurant industry here is essentially wiped out overnight. You lose half your business, or half your customers.
Right.
Now you've only got off-premise accounts. So how have you pivoted? Obviously, you're focusing on retail, but talk us through what you've been doing in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I mean, the first thing we did was gather our crisis management team, a small group of us, and we took a look at, what are we, the problem, James, is, with so many uncertainties and unknowns, I think I have a history of making very, very good decisions and judgments, on average, but I've always made them with some degree of certitude about the factors involved and tried to anticipate what would happen. The problem here is that none of us have the ability, with all the uncertainties and unknowns, to make a decision that we can be sure is the right one. Mm-hmm. So the first thing we did was take a look at our, what various scenarios of what's the world going to look like? What is our business going to look like? Losing 50% of our customers and with a 50% sales decline. and we quickly looked over every line item on our P&L and looked where, analyzing, evaluating where we could cut costs and whatnot, and we came up with a strategy. We have a variety of companies under one umbrella. We've got the original Skurnik Wines New York, which we call the Skurnik East, which is New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. Then we have Skurnik West, which we started 3 years ago. We've got a very active business out there with 23 employees. And then we acquired a small company in Ohio called Vintner Select within the last year also. So, we're an importer. So we have a national team of salespeople, and we're also wholesalers. So very complex scenario. And our goal was to try to figure out how can we go forward? What is it going to look like without laying off anybody? And I'm proud to say that in most circumstances, we were able to do that, with the exception of Ohio, which is the newest addition, and that required a different strategy.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts there. Now, the numbers I've seen so far, I saw some Nielsen ratings today that actually said wine retail was up 25% and online wine buying was up like 243% through the end of March. So now that so those numbers are a little dated, but now that we're into the end of April, are you seeing that plateau perhaps in the retail wine buying? Is it leveling off at a high level? Is it tapering off a little bit? What do you see?
What happened in the first week or 10 days was the savvy retailers, it was like New Year's Eve every day for them, because with everybody staying at home in the middle of a crisis, it turned out that people were actually consuming more and they were buying a lot. So at first we thought maybe this is going to be these purchases are more like toilet paper hoarding, and I think it was to some degree. But once people in Manhattan, for example, had 4 cases or 5 cases in their foyer, they came home. They walked the dog, they came out and they popped a bottle of wine, and within 10 days the wine was gone, so they keep buying more.
I know, it was like a point of sale stack right in your doorway.
But we couldn't really plan on a future that included that. I didn't really think it would continue. So, it tapered off, and now it has, as you pointed out, it has stabilized at a very, very good level. So it helps, our retailers are in aggregate are probably up 25 to 30% over what they would normally be doing. So it mitigates 15 to 20% of the loss that we have from the on-premise restaurant trade, which is something we're encouraged, but it doesn't cover enough.
Sure. Have you seen a price point at retail change where people buying more expensive wines in the beginning and now they're buying value wines?
In the beginning, it was open season. All wines at all price points, top high-end wines, expensive Burgundies. People were grabbing whatever they could. It tapered off that was the first 7 to 10 days. The next 7 to 10 days, we saw a reduction in that, but now we're seeing a return to that. And I think that, for now, people are realizing that they're home and they have more idle time and they're online and they're buying. So I think, we're going to see another leveling off. We have to where it's going to be, similar to what happened after 9/11 with value wines. $15 to $25 retail wines will probably rule the day.
That would probably make sense to go in that direction. There's another underlying problem for the wine industry right now that remains from last October. It's called tariffs. I know that you jumped out ahead of those tariffs, and you told me you brought in 21 containers of champagne just to have a year's supply on hand before the tariffs hit. Right. Now you've got a lot of inventory, and again, half your customer base. What are you doing there to deal with that?
Well, first we had the tariffs on October 18th, the first round of tariffs. It was 25% on the value of wines from certain countries, France, etc., for wines that were 14% alcohol and under. And then there was the specter, the threat of an additional 100% tariff that we started to hear about in January, which panicked the industry. And these are existential threats, a real blow to potentially to importers like ourselves. And so we just scrambled, and like many others, we shipped as much wine as possible. So 21,000 cases of grower champagne in January and February, not knowing what would happen. Fortunately, this was related to the digital tax, and that can has been kicked down the road. It hasn't gone away, but we're just trying to sell wine. We're just trying to enjoy a lifestyle here, and somebody seems to be after us. So we have a lot of inventory, and we have a lot less customers than we thought we would. Right. We have a lot of expensive inventory. We have, we're facing, accounts receivable that's probably going to be slower or lower than we thought, and we're trying to keep our staff employed. So it's an existential problem, and we're strong. We're a strong company. We're gonna make it through. We know we can see the on the other side of this thing, without knowing when. It creates a real challenge.
Right. Now, you are doing some business right now, and I know that those of us who are in a position to help are helping the wine and restaurant industries, and you like to call it defending the wine and food culture. You've got some charitable endeavors that you're doing with Skurnik Wines. Talk a little bit about that. You've partnered with some California wineries.
What I have a fear that we're going to potentially lose, the texture and fabric. Part of the texture and fabric of our society is, being able to go out to restaurants and enjoy wine and socialize. And, we're going to get through this. We're all going to be going to restaurants again. We're not really sure what the new reality is going to look like and when, but what I'm afraid of is that the culture in New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles and other places, the great group of people that have been employed by the fabulous restaurant scene and retail scene, I think we're going to lose a lot of people. They're going to end up, we're going to lose them, through our fingertips to other industries. They're going to have to move elsewhere. They're going to find other jobs, and that's going to have a really detrimental effect on the fabric. This is we're in a business. We're in the wine business, so it's a fun business, but the connection between the grape grower, the vigneron, the winemaker, through all of the logistics that gets the wine to market, to the farmers, to the shippers, to the importers, to the wholesalers, to the retailers, to the restaurateurs, to the consumer. There's so many lives at stake, and there's so much at stake here that the tariffs. It's just such an awful idea. Number one, and now would be a great time for the government to remove these tariffs in light of the fact that we're in a global pandemic economic crisis that's going to last quite some time.
Right. We can't necessarily wait for help from all the things that we'd like to have help from. You are helping, though. You're working with a few California wineries, just to get back to the original question. Right. And you're donating to both Roar and the United Sommelier Foundation, correct?
We anticipated this, and we sought out participating wineries, partners of ours. Mm-hmm. And we were pleased that we got a very, very good group of wineries to support and contribute for the sale of the cases of wines from the wineries that are participating. Okay. We, with the wineries, are donating a certain amount of dollars per case to these two charities. One is is Roar, to help the restaurant industry, and the other is the American Sommelier Society, to help the sommelier and the restaurant workers. So we feel very, very good to be able to do that. What we really all need to be doing here is taking care of our own, because we don't even know, of our own ability to survive. But at the same time, we can't survive without our partners, our winery partners, our customers, all the way down the line. So we're really happy to be able to, and I think we're going to generate a good amount of money to distribute.
Well, we hope so, because we're going to need it. We're going to need the strong players in the wine industry to help out a lot, as in the restaurant industry as well, too. And these are two industries that have proven to be really vital components of American culture, and we're going to need them back to help pull us out of this ditch that we're in. So we appreciate your efforts in giving back. Just to remind everyone, for continuing coverage of the coronavirus and its impact on the industry, and not only how the industry is helping, but how you can help as well, you can check out our updated coverage daily at www.winespectator.com. And of course, we are going to continue this live chat series next week on the same days, Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday is a time change because we'll be talking to someone in Portugal. We're going to bring in Rupert Symington of Symington Family Estates. He's piloted a family company through 200 years, so I think he knows a little bit about getting through pandemics and other issues. And then we're going to bring in Hristo Zavosky, who's the wine director for the Alta Morea Group. He's got 5 locations that are still open and operating, and he has had a real interesting change in his business parameters, too. So he'll be joining us on Thursday at 7 p.m., and I hope you guys will all join us then. Michael, before we sign off, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking, I'll show you 1 second. It's champagne hour.
Okay.
So here, I don't know if you can see the label.
It's backwards, of course, which drives me crazy.
It's really hard to see it, but it's Cedric Mousset Vigneron in the Valley de la Marne in the village of Quille. You can see it's a rosé. He's a specialist in Pinot Meunier.
All right.
And this is a rosé made from a perpetual blend of usually it's a recent vintage like 12 blended with an older vintage perpetual blend. This one I think is 2003, 2004. This Pinot Meunier, which I happen to love. I love the raspberry essence of Pinot Meunier. So that's what I'm drinking. And I'm also drinking it in my favorite wine glass, the Jancis Robinson Richard Brendan wine glass, which is the finest wine glass in the world. If people have not experienced it, you should really find out about it.